Welcome to the Female Church Leaders Podcast, a weekly resource for women who love God, love the church, and are called to lead. I'm your host, Kadi Cole, church leader, author, and executive coach. After more than 30 years in full-time ministry, often as the only woman at the table, I understand how meaningful yet challenging your calling can be. That's why I created this podcast, to remind you that you're not leading alone. Each week, I'll share practical tools, biblical insights, and honest encouragement for the real challenges female leaders face in ministry, so you can grow your skills, strengthen your faith, and lead with more confidence and joy without burning out or striving to prove yourself. We drop a new episode every Monday because Sunday is coming and you are going to be ready for it. One of the interesting things about growing as a leader is that the skills that make you successful at one level aren't always the skills you need to develop for the next one. Most of us learn leadership by how to get things done. How are we going to pull off this event? How do we recruit enough volunteers? How do we fix this problem? How do we launch this ministry? How do we create the systems, find the money, build the team, and actually make this idea work? And if you're good at those things, people notice. You become known as the person who gets things done. You come prepared, you follow through, you solve problems. You learn how to take someone else's vision and turn it into reality. And for a lot of female church leaders, this is a particularly well-developed leadership muscle. And in most church environments, women get plenty of opportunities to organize, execute, support, and implement. And those opportunities have helped us become really strong at the how. But as your leadership grows, you need another muscle working alongside it: the ability to cast vision. Now, muscles in our body often work in complementary pairs: your biceps and triceps, your abs and lower back, and leadership competencies work that way too. So the goal isn't to trade strong implementation muscles for a strong vision casting muscle. We actually need both working together, because vision without implementation goes nowhere, and implementation without vision eventually loses people's hearts. I remember learning this the hard way. I would walk into a meeting having done all this work. I had thought through the plan, anticipated the problems, worked out all the details, and I knew exactly how we could make something happen. And then this guy would throw out an idea off the cuff with this passion and all this emotion behind it, probably some verse out of context, and suddenly everyone was excited about his idea and ready to go. And I would get left there thinking, wait a minute. I took the time to really think through all of this. I talked to all the team leaders to build a solid plan, and I put it together with all this proof for you, and his idea isn't even going to work. It took me a while to realize that we were bringing two different leadership competencies into that leadership room. I knew how to make the idea work, but he knew how to help people see what we were trying to accomplish and why they should care about it. I needed to learn both. I see this same distinction all the time when I consult multi-site churches. Churches get really excited about going multi-site, and there is so much to figure out when you do that. Where will the new location be? Who will lead it? What ministries will we launch? How will staffing work? What gets centralized? What stays at the campus? And for those of us who love implementation and strategy, this is our happy place. And because we're so excited about it and we spend the majority of our time on it, we can start talking about multi-site as though multi-site itself is the vision. But it's not. Multi-site is a strategy. It's the how. The vision is that preferred future you're trying to create. And vision doesn't change very often. Maybe you want to reach people in communities where you don't currently have presence. Maybe as a church you want to make disciples in neighborhoods your existing location doesn't reach. Maybe God has given your church a burden for a particular group of people. That's the vision. That's what your church's mission and goal is. Multi-site is simply the next strategy you are implementing to get there. Church planting might be another. Micro-churches might be another. Small groups, missional groups, or when I was growing up, the busing ministry and Sunday school. All different strategies, but working towards the same vision. Those are how statements, not what statements. And that's one reason understanding the difference matters so much. Strategies need to change, but a compelling vision should be durable enough to survive those changes. And as we grow in leadership, we have to learn to lift our thinking out of how, out of implementation, long enough to communicate what we're trying to accomplish and why it matters. Simon Sinek's book called Start With Why is a great resource if you want to develop this way of thinking. He makes the case that people aren't motivated simply by what we're doing. They're connected to why we're doing it. And that's the work of vision casting. You are painting a picture of a preferred future in a way that connects with people's hearts and minds and makes them want to help create it. We need to be casting vision at all levels of the organization. This isn't just reserved for the lead pastor or the executive team. Wherever you are as a leader, you need to cast vision. So if you lead the children's volunteers, a small group ministry, the worship team, a women's ministry, or 3 people in the parking lot every other Sunday, those people need more from you than assignments. They need to understand what you're trying to accomplish in alignment with the mission of your church, why it matters, and then how their contribution connects to it. Then you can figure out that how together. So how do we actually get better at communicating the what and the why? Well, there is a simple framework that I think makes this really easy to understand, and it's one you can start practicing right away. It's talk about the past, talk about the present, and talk about the future. So let's start with the past. Where have we been? We need to honor what got us here. Tell the story. What has God already done? What have people sacrificed, built, learned, or accomplished? What was good about that season? Vision doesn't require us to diminish or dishonor the past in order to create enthusiasm for the future. In fact, that usually backfires. So we need to honor and acknowledge the past. Then we want to move to the present. Where are we now? This is where you create some healthy tension. What has changed since that story you just told about the past? What are we seeing now that we weren't seeing before? What opportunity is in front of us? What isn't working anymore? Why would staying exactly where we are keep us from accomplishing what God has called us to do? You can be genuinely grateful for where you've been and still recognize that where you are is no longer sufficient for where God is calling you to go. So we honor the past, we acknowledge the present, and we actually build some tension about why this isn't a good place to stay. And then finally, we want to paint a picture of the future. Where could we go? Where should we go? What is actually possible? Who could be reached? What could change? What would it look like if this ministry were really accomplishing what God called it to accomplish? And this is where, if you are an implementation person, you have to exercise some real restraint. Don't immediately start dropping into the plan. Stay in the future long enough for people to see it with you. Use stories. Find language that connects to people's hearts. Use we so that they can see themselves in the picture, not just you, not just me, but us together. Make it simple enough to remember. Now, when you're casting vision, please, as female leaders, pay special attention to those bad habits that we can sometimes fall into. We want to qualify what we're saying. So avoid anything that sounds like, well, I was just thinking that maybe we could, or I kind of feel like, or maybe we could try. Those habits can get in the way of people really believing in what the future could look like. The leader believing in that future is the first step to vision casting. So make sure your word choices reflect your own belief in what you know is actually possible. And then finally, communicate the vision enough times and in enough places that other people believe it's possible too. If you're not tired of saying the vision, you probably haven't said it enough. People need to hear this vision consistently enough that eventually they can say it without you. That's ultimately the goal, to build it into the culture. That you found ways of saying it, metaphors to use, heart pictures, heart words that connect to people's deeper spiritual insights, that they can actually repeat it without you being there. That's when it becomes part of the culture. Now, my favorite example of the past, present, future vision cast is in scripture in the book of Nehemiah. There are so many rich leadership lessons in this book, but in chapter 2, Nehemiah arrives in Jerusalem and sees the condition of the city for himself. After inspecting the walls, he gathers the leaders and essentially walks them through this framework. There's the past, the story of Jerusalem and God's people that everyone standing there already knows. He walks into it connected to that history, to where we've been in the past. And Nehemiah has already reminded us that Jerusalem is the city where his ancestors are buried. And he's heard that people are in great trouble and disgrace, and its walls have been broken down. Then Nehemiah names the present. In verse 17, he says, "You see the trouble we are in? Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire." Do you see the graphic language he uses? He doesn't minimize their reality or pretend that things are better than they are, but he doesn't stay in just the present. he paints a different future. He says, come, let us rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, a physical viewpoint of what this could look like. He says, rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. Do you see how he paints something graphic and physical, but also something emotional? We're going to rebuild the walls, but we're going to not be in disgrace anymore. And then in verse 18, he tells them about the gracious hand of my God, which is on him and the support the king has already given him. He's painted a picture of the future, and he's explained how he's going to get from here to there. That's the plan, but that happens at the very end of the leadership vision casting. And then look what happens. I love the people's response. They hear all of this, and then they say, yes, let us start rebuilding. Notice they haven't worked out every detail of the implementation yet. That's actually another fun part of this story. But Nehemiah, to get everyone moving toward the vision, helped them see enough of the future in a personal and heartfelt way that they wanted to help build it. That's what a good vision does. It doesn't eliminate the need for strategy and planning. It creates the motivation and alignment that makes people want to engage in the how, which, as we know, is usually where all the hard work is. So you got to start with capturing people's hearts and connecting with their soul to motivate them to do that hard work. Okay, so your action step for this week is to choose one team you lead and one opportunity you have this fall to infuse more vision. Practice becoming a vision caster. Maybe it's the opening of your next staff meeting. Perhaps it's the first 10 minutes of a volunteer training you've got scheduled for this fall. Or maybe you're launching an initiative and you've been spending all your time in preparing the how. But before you get to that meeting, write out these 3 things. Also the what and the why. So think about the past. Where have we been? Think about the present. Where are we now? And why do we need to not stay here? And then think about the future. What is possible? Then spend some time finding the words that will help people connect their hearts and their minds to that future vision. Cast the vision first, then work on the how together. If this episode helped you identify a leadership competency you haven't had the opportunity to fully develop yet, that's exactly why we created the Competency Gap Quiz. There are competencies like vision casting that are often underdeveloped in many female church leaders simply because of the types of roles and opportunities we've had so far along the way. Identifying those gaps gives you the opportunity to intentionally strengthen those competencies. The Competency Gap Quiz takes about 2 minutes, and it will help you identify which leadership gap may be most important for you to focus on next. You can find a link in the show notes and in our Monday email. Thank you so much for continuing to grow in your leadership and stewarding the opportunities God has entrusted with you to. Remember, we are here to cheer you on every step of the way. I'm so glad we got to spend this time together on the Female Church Leaders Podcast. I hope you're walking away encouraged, equipped, and reminded that your calling truly matters. To keep growing, join us for our next Closing the Leadership Gap cohort at closingtheleadershipgap.com. It's a guided coaching experience, including live Q&A with me, designed to accelerate your leadership journey. If this podcast has been helpful to you, would you please take a moment to follow, rate, and share it? Your engagement helps the algorithms suggest our resources to female church leaders we haven't had a chance to meet yet. And don't forget to follow at Female Church Leaders on Instagram for encouragement and leadership tools designed just for you. You can also follow my personal feed at Kadi Cole, spelled Kadicole. Keep leading faithfully, keep growing your leadership gifts, and I'll see you next Monday because Sunday is coming and you are going to be ready for it.